Hi, this is exercise 8. In this exercise, we're going to be looking at how to embed audio and video in HTML5. HTML5 provides native tags that we can use to embed audio and video, which is new in this version of HTML. So to get started, let's talk about a really brief background of what we're going to get into. In the past, in previous versions of HTML, we had to rely on other outside programs such as Flash or JavaScript to drive audio and video playback inside of the browser. So new in HTML5, we can natively embed audio and video using the audio and video tags, which we'll take a look at. And before we get into that, I want to talk about the supported formats by different browsers. So you can actually see this chart here shows you the 3 competing formats for video on the web. This first format here is called OGG Theora, and then of course you have Apple's H.264 and Google's VP8 or WebM format. And one of the things you'll notice right now is that at least at the time of recording this video, currently, all the newest browsers either support one or the other, or sometimes 2 of the 3, or in one case, Android browsers on your phone is actually supporting all 3. But it's rare that you see a device or a browser that happens to support all 3 of these. So ideally, it would be nice if there was, a unified format for everything, so we could just make one video format and it's going to work for everyone. And we'll talk about some possible solutions for this coming up. But to start off with, I just want to point out from this chart here, you can see here's a list of browsers here over on the right-hand side from Internet Explorer, Internet Explorer Mobile, Firefox, Chrome, Chromium, Android, Safari, Opera, and Conqueror. So you can also see that certain versions, these are all the newest versions of the browsers. You can see support here for the latest stable versions of these browsers and which particular competing video formats they support. So for example, Internet Explorer, you can manually install this OGG Theora video format. However, natively it's already supporting the H.264 or the MPEG format. And you can see that you can also do a manual install of WebM. So you can also see then that Firefox, it does support these free open source formats such as OGG Theora and VP8 WebM, but currently you need a manual install only available for Microsoft Windows for H.264. And actually at the time of recording this video, there is talk of Mozilla supporting in the future versions supporting H.264 format. So there's these 3 competing formats, and right now it's not concretely clear which one's going to eventually become the popular model, or if this battle can go on for many years. It might be a while until we see one video type emerge beating the rest and becoming some sort of standardized universal format. So in the meanwhile, what does this mean to you as a developer? How can you embed video natively into your browser using the HTML5 video tag, and how can you get that to play on all these different browsers and all these different devices, because we want to be able to reach as much of our audience as possible. So we'll talk a little bit about that. First thing we want to do is let's go ahead and bring up our code editor. And you can see here I'm in the exercise 8 source folder. Inside this folder I have an index.html file which I've opened up, and this guy's currently blank. Let's see here. We do have a doc type specified, a head and a body, and there are some comments in the code down below. I just have a multi-line comment which has some links to some useful and some relevant information on embedding audio and video, resources to other sites in terms of standalone players, custom players using JavaScript, Flash, and also information about the HTML5 video embedding in the browser, and certain links to resources for programs that you can download for both Mac and Windows for converting to these different types. So one thing you will notice about the three formats though is that, if you pick either, at least two of these, H.264 and then one of the other open source formats, you pretty much have your bases covered. So I either have to have, one video that's H.264 and another video format that's VP8, or I can have a video format that's H.264 and another one that's OGG Theora. But fortunately, we don't have to really create all three of these types to reach our audience. We really only have to create two of these, either this one and this one here in the center, or this one here in center and this one over here on the right. So we'll come back and talk about that a little bit. To start off with, I want to introduce you to a new tag in HTML5, which is called the video tag. So this was the solution, in HTML5, the solution was to provide a tag that will stand in for all those other sort of fallback solutions we had in the past. We were using other external applications like Flash, as I said prior, or JavaScript to show and embed videos into the browser. And there's an interest created surrounding HTML5 being able to support video on its own. And hence we have the creation of tags like the audio tag and the video tag. So first we'll talk about this video tag. Now the video tag initially was supposed to take a source file like this, just in the same way you can create a source attribute for an image. And the idea was that you would point toward a particular video link, it would play back in the browser, which is all well and good except for the fact that we just described, at least at the time of recording this video, that there are three different competing video formats. Some work in some browsers, others work in other browsers. So where does that leave us as developers? Well, instead of linking to a single source file here, instead the video tag is used in conjunction with a few other tags that go inside of it. So let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, we still have the video tag, this opening video tag, and we also have a closing video tag, like so. And inside of this opening and closing video tag, we have the ability to link to multiple source files using this source tag, like this. So say I had two source files like that. To start off with though, I think what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and have you guys write out the width and height of our video. In this case, we'll keep it rather small. I'm actually trying to make it the exact size of my video footage, which is a good practice. And I'm going to use an attribute called controls. And this might seem kind of redundant, but we're actually going to give it a value of controls. What that means is that, that the video will display controls on the bottom of it. And we're allowing the browser here to control and style those controls, by the way. Okay, so inside the video attribute, instead of adding the src, which is a possibility, I chose to leave it out there, and I just gave it a width and a height. So this is 320 pixels wide and 200 pixels tall, which happens to be the exact size pixels resolution of my particular video that we're going to be working with. So this video tag again has an opening and a closing video tag. And when the browser comes to this, it's going to say, okay, they're putting a video in here, no problem. They want it to be this, wide and this height, and they want to show controls on the video. Now there are other attributes that you can put in here. And at least at the time of recording this video, there's some support for some of the attributes, but not full support in all the browsers for other attributes. So if you want to look at some more examples of the attributes that you can put in here, you can check out some of the links below here that have information on embedding the video tag. There's some other attributes such as loop if you want the video to loop multiple times, etc. So you can check that out, and you can always test it to see how it works in different browsers if you're concerned about the support for the particular attribute you're trying to use. Okay, so coming back again to these source tags. So as we mentioned, there are three competing formats, and as I mentioned, you really only need to have at least two of those formats. MP4 and in H.264 encoded MP4, which the codec for that actually cost money. It's not open source. It was created by Apple. and that is, copywritten. It's licensed to Apple, so if you have some software or something that has, you want to use that H.264 codec, oftentimes you have to purchase it. And because of that, there's been a big movement towards some of these other open source formats, such as Theoris, OGG, or the VP8 WebM format, which, as I mentioned prior, is we see Google using. Okay, so to start off with, I want to link to my two source files, and we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about why we have two different source tags here. So I can say source, and here I'll point my SRC to the first video. So I'm going to use that SRC attribute and point toward my video folder, which is here. So I'll say video slash, and you can see there's a video here called 128.mp4. So this MP4 is going to play in the Safari browser, Safari mobile on any Apple device such as an iPhone, iPad. It's going to play in Internet Explorer. This video file, however, at least currently at the time of recording this, it's not going to play in Opera, and it's not going to play in Firefox. In fact, if you drag an MP4 into Firefox, for example, it just doesn't play at all. You get a little red X, or it just simply won't display anything. However, you can drag this 128.mp4 directly into Safari, and it'll play just fine. So what do we do if our browser can't see that? Well, we can actually provide an alternate source video file here. And this other one, I went ahead and already created this for you. This is called 128.ogv, which is also in that video folder there. So I'll say 128.ogv. So this is the Theoris format. I could have used the WebM as my second backup one, the VP8 WebM Google format. In this case, I used the free and open source Theoris codec to create this video. And if you're interested to learn how to create, how to convert from one file type to another, there are some great open source and free programs out there. I happen to be working on Mac, and I provided a link to an OGV converter for Mac. There's also many for Windows. If you search for it, you'll have no problem finding that. If you type in OGG or OGV Theoris, and GUI, graphic user interface, for converting, it will use the FFmpeg to Theora command line to convert. In this case, this is a really nice free program for Mac called Ogifier, and basically you just point toward the video and it will just create it for you. You can just save it out as another format. In this case, I just took this MP4 and I just converted it to an OGV, creating a second file there. So in these source tabs, to be nice to the browser, we can also give it, in this case I'll say video slash MP4 for this first one, and the second type here we can say type equals, and for the value here you can say video slash OGG, so it knows what type of codec is encoded in this video container. Okay, so let's talk, now that we have this code written out, let's talk in a sort of broader sense about what's really actually happening here. So if my browser, regardless of the browser that's bringing it up here, it's first seeing this video tag, and as I said before, it's checking out the width and the height, and it knows to show video controls, and then it's going to go inside of here. It sees the opening and the closing video tag, and it says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go inside there and check the first source file. If it can play this first source file, then great. It's going to display the video, and it's not going to go on any further. It's actually going to ignore the rest of the code inside of this opening closing video tag. So again, if it can play this MP4, say it's the Safari browser, it's going to say, oh great, here's an MP4, awesome. And then it's going to just simply ignore the second source, the source tag here. It's going to say, okay, no problem, I can play the first, ignore everything else below. And this could be, more and more code. You could have multiple source files here. It's going to play what it can and ignore the rest. Let's say that this was Firefox, for example. In that case, it's going to say, okay, here's a video, and we can see here the height and width and controls, and then it's going to say, oh, I can't play this MP4 format. I'm going to ignore it and just move on to the next source and check it out, see if I can play that. Oh, yep, I can play this. This is the .ogv format. And it says, oh, awesome, I can play this. So it's going to ignore any other code below it. So basically, inside of this opening and closing video tag, we have the ability to give it multiple sources, and it will take what it can get. You know, whatever it can use, it's going to use, and anything else in the code, it's going to ignore. Now, what about, you know, that's great for all the newest browsers that support these HTML5 tags, like the audio and video tag. But what if I have a really old browser that doesn't understand the video tag? It doesn't, you know, it doesn't understand this HTML5 doc type or these newer video tags. In that situation, what happens is it's going to ignore all of this code. It doesn't understand what these source files mean, so it just ignores them. And it's going to go ahead and go down. And here we have the ability to create a fallback solution. So we can fall back to a Flash player, for example. So I'll just make a comment, fallback to Flash. If no support for HTML5. Okay, so in this situation, I actually am going to use the object tag, which is a popular tag. Sometimes you'll see an embed tag or an object tag or a sort of combination of these tags in order to embed a Flash file, an SWF Flash file into the browser so it will play. So in this case, we're going to use the object tag here. I'll just say object, and we'll give it a width and a height. So we'll make it the same, obviously, as same size video here. In this case, it's, let's see here. Oh, that should be 240 up here. I made a mistake. Let me put 200. So this should be height 240. And this, of course, has a closing object tag, /object. Okay. So inside of the object tag here, we can give it parameters. So for example, we can say param is the particular tag we use. And in this case, we're going to give it a name of movie. And we're going to give it a value to link to the Flash file. And I've provided you with, with some Flash video players here. This one here is inside the Flash folder, and it's just called video_player.swf. And I've given it sort of a generic name here, but this is actually the a popular free online video player known as the Longtail JW Longtail video player, which is at least widely used at the time of this recording. So we'll go ahead and say Flash /video_player.swf. So this is linking to the actual Flash file, the video player itself. Okay, and we'll give it another parameter here using that param tag again, and in this time we'll give it a name of Flash vars, which this SWF file is actually looking for some variables. For example, we have to tell it where the file is that it's actually going to play. So we'll say value, and inside the value we have to point toward the file, which we do. The action script is looking for this command here, which is file equals, and we have to tell it, remember, this is actually in relationship to the SWF file, which is in this Flash folder. So we have to tell it to go outside of the Flash folder, which is .. And we have to tell it to go inside the video folder and then to play 128.mp4. So I chose to use a Flash player that can actually play MP4s. And this is kind of a smart move here, because instead of having to create 3 video file types here, or more, 3 or 4, I've only chosen to create 2 video types. And I happen to find I particularly looked for a Flash player that can play MP4s. So I can use this MP4 file here for any HTML5 supported browsers, and if they don't support HTML5, this Flash file is going to load here, and the Flash video player is going to load that same MP4. So I really have all my bases covered here. This is gonna, I guarantee this will play on any device, and I've only had to create 2 video file types, and hopefully in the future we won't even have to create 2, we can just create 1. And we'll also talk about, there is some possibilities for using custom video players that utilize JavaScript and have support for HTML5, where you can just give it a single video file type and it will play on all devices. So we'll talk about that at the end of this video. Okay, so so far so good. Just in case we work with an older version of a browser and it doesn't have as good support for the object and param tags, we can also say embed. And this is another way you can embed Flash files, is using this embed tag. So inside of here we'll go ahead and say embed src, and we have to point toward that Flash file again, which is flash/video player.swf, which links to the actual video player file again. Same thing before, just giving it a width and height. In fact, I can just copy and paste this from here. I can say width and height 320 by 240 and paste this below there. And this also has some flash vars, which is linking to that MP4 file. So in fact, I can actually copy this guy from here. I say first I'll type out flash vars equals, and here we can actually, I'll copy and paste this file location here, which is this 128.mp4. We'll just paste that in here. I think I'll zoom out because it's off my screen. There we go. We can make the code a little larger. Okay, excellent. So this is good to go. This is kind of a mouthful in terms of how many lines of code I had to write, but remember, this is the way we can embed it so that it will work in any browser, any device, and has some fallback support for, like very old browsers that are not supporting HTML5 video embedding. And there are some solutions for creating, using a custom player where you can give it a single file type. But this is a way you can do it just natively with the browser, and natively using HTML5, it's going to embed the video and play it in any device. So we'll just go ahead and save that. Okay, and if I bring this up in my browser, then I'll just refresh, and you can see here that if I hit play, it's showing me that video there. Very cool. Okay, so this is Firefox. It's playing the OGV file, and let's see what happens if I comment out the HTML5 source code here. So for example, if I highlight this code up here, and I'll just quickly comment that out, and I'll comment out this closing video tag there. So this is to demonstrate what would happen if it were an older browser that doesn't understand these video tags and source tags. It's really only going to be able to see this Flash script here, this markup that's embedding the Flash object. So let's check that out. So I'm just going to refresh, and you can see then that, well, the controls look a little different, and the reason why is now it's using my JW long tail player video. But you can see if I click play, it's actually using Flash, and Flash is playing it. So this is what people in older browsers would see, right? Whereas people in newer browsers are going to be able to see these HTML5 video tags and these source files. And just to demonstrate that this will play in both my browsers on Mac here, you can see here it is playing the HTML5 video in Firefox. And I'm going to copy and bring this guy over to Safari. And you can see that it's also playing it in Safari. So here you have Safari and Firefox side by side. Now there is a slight difference in terms of these controls at the bottom. You can see that right now by default, Safari is making the control bars for this player dark gray with these white play and pause marks here. play and pause controls. And you can see here that it's a little bit different in Firefox as it is in Chrome, for example. So I'll bring this guy up in Chrome as well. Oh, there we go. And you can see, once again, it actually looks different in Chrome. There's sort of like a blue timeline bar here. So if you're interested in using, one of the standalone player solutions, you can customize these controls. There's different skins you can use to customize the video controls to make them perhaps match the rest of your website if that's something you're interested in doing. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into my code here, and we'll save the file. And I also want to demonstrate audio. There is an audio tag, and you can use an SRC. For example, I can point toward a source file like this with my audio tag, just like you can with an image tag. And audio tags also support the ability to give it multiple source files. So I can have an opening and closing audio tag like this, just like before. And I can also point to multiple source files. So in this case, one source file I can point to is in my audio folder here. Okay, so I can point toward audio/rupture.mp3. And here we have audio/mp3 for the type. And we can also point toward audio/rupture.ogg. So this is also a Theorus audio encoding. This is actually a little bit higher resolution and lossless as opposed to MP3, which uses lossy compression. For audio, we have OGG, which is a lossless type of audio compression, still maintaining a similar small file size, but in most cases you can get a little better clarity for your audio. And if for some reason a browser you're using doesn't support OGG, it will most likely support MP3, which is very widely common and available. In fact, at the time of recording this, I'm not sure that any device really doesn't support at least MP3. And if you're interested to learn particularly the support for those, there are some links below where you can check that out and look that up. We also have the ability to do fallback solutions. So if there's an older browser that doesn't support this, we can do a flash fallback for anything that doesn't support HTML5. And in this case, we'll also use Flash for this. We'll go ahead and set this guy up. So we'll create an object type here. This is the particular requirements of this Flash file, which is an application/x-shockwave-flash type. And we can point toward a data file here. By using the data attribute, we can say flash/audio player.swf. And if you'll excuse me there, I forgot there's actually an underscore. We're actually linking to these from this Flash file here. It's called audioplayer.swf, and we'll give this a width. And I think I'll just set this to 200 there. And we'll give this particular file a height of 20 pixels, which I believe is the standard size of this SWF file. Okay, and of course this guy also has a closing object tag here. And as I mentioned before, we can give it parameters inside of here. So I'll go ahead and use the param tag here, and I'll give it an attribute name, and we'll say movie. and we'll give this a value then, linking back to this Flash audio player here. And some other parameters, there's different, you're gonna have to check whenever you use a different sort of Flash video, audio player, whatever sort of Flash animation you're using, or Flash program, you may want to check what sort of parameters and things. They each usually have their own unique parameters that the action script is looking for. For example, in this case, I can actually specify background color by using the param name BG color, and I can give it a value. So I'll make this just a light gray color using £EF. Just give it a hexadecimal value there. So that's another parameter I can specify for this particular Flash player. And as I said, they're different for each. And then I'll go ahead and give this guy a name. Here a Flash vars, just like that. And for the value here, we have to tell it where the file is. So in this case, we want to say mp3 equals to let it know it's an mp3 file. And we want to point toward the audio folder / rupture.mp3 is a particular file we're linking to. So I'll go ahead and save that there. And that's it. So this is full support. This guy is going to work in any device, any browser. Again, I picked a Flash player that supports MP3. This one here, the video supported MP4. So I could just use these two files and it's going to work on anything at all, anything possible. And let's go back and check that out in the browser. I will refresh. And we can see that it starts the playback. And then we can check this out in another browser just to make sure. So here I have Chrome, and I'll go ahead and paste that there in Chrome. Same thing in Chrome, although the play bar looks a little different, you can see it is in fact playing the audio back. And last but not least, we can throw this guy into Safari. Great. And so that's playing back in everything. One last thing I want to do, just as I'd shown you before, is what if the browser doesn't support these HTML5 tags? I can comment them out to demonstrate how an older browser would see this. So I'll save the file and we'll go back and refresh, and we can see that now it's actually loading this Flash player, and I've told the background color to be light gray. So there we have support for older browsers here. And you can see then that any browser I put it in now is actually going to display it the same if I refresh Flash player here. There we have Safari, Chrome, and Firefox. Do a refresh here on Chrome. There we go. And again, demonstrating the Flash playback on Chrome.